I'm doing some finger painting to make a message to the SPD. I'm sorry, it's not going to be in Spanish. After last night, I've decided that I should just tell people what I'm about. And I know I'm going to lose some subscribers, some friends, maybe a lot of friends, but I think I just have to do this. So my dad has two best friends. One of them's name is Matthew. They went to St. Benedict's Catholic School, elementary school together in Wallingford. And Uncle Matthew's girlfriend was sexually molested by the SPD right in front of him at Gasworks Park. That's the same place that Billy the Fridge filmed the music video for his song Seattle Love Story. My dad's other best friend is a Jew, but he won't tell my dad he's a Jew because he knows my dad's opinions. So politically, I'm Murray N. Rothbard of the 1990s. The Rothbard of the 90s realized that the central tool for state expansion in the world today is the promotion of anti-white racism. The Rothbard of the 90s had been preparing the libertarian right to be a leading voice against the cultural destruction and ethnic cleansing of white peoples and white communities. Right after Rothbard died, Lew Rockwell decided to sanitize libertarianism away from the politically incorrect discussion of race. The only reason why LewRockwell.com has started to look politically incorrect is because sites like Red Ice has made it acceptable to do so. People always think that the bowdlerization of the Rothbard movement started with the Ron Paul letters controversy. But it actually started with the inception of LewRockwell.com. If Rothbard had lived, RothbardRockwell.com would have looked radically different. This blog was originally going to be about why they hate Confederates, but I'll do that in a couple weeks. The reason why they hate Confederates is because they want to make it easier to justify their invasions. This makes the US soldier a plaything for people like that Zio bitch, Madeline Not So Bright. Now for my thoughts on the police. My thoughts on the police are consistent with the late Will Grigg, and I'll put a link to his site down below. Alternatively, High Impact is pretty good too. My cousin's family is law enforcement, and they live in a small community where if your teenage kid gets in trouble for something, they'll just chew him out and drive him home. But in Seattle, the cops think that it's their moral duty to do everything they can to maximize your criminal charge. The alt-right with their Blue Lives Matter signs largely ignore the massive police abuse against white people, some of it being racially motivated. I do think that they're starting to wake up now, though. After getting attacked and having bottles of urine and concrete thrown at them at their own protest, with the police just standing there and watching, only to arrest them and try to lock them up forever once they start defending themselves. Similarly, the alt-right tends to ignore the high rates of racially motivated prison rape of white males. I think this is because they think, oh, I'm a law-abiding fascist, and those people aren't good enough to be in my white tribe. But if that's your attitude, then I think you need to turn in your swastika, you self-righteous alt-right faggot. The alt-right, or the new right, regularly advocates massive state violence against white people in order to make them better white people. So if you live in a trailer park and you drink beer on the weekends, or if you're white trash like I am, then they want the government to hold a gun to your head in order to make you better. The libertarian bashing Eric Stryker comes to mind. For Eric Stryker, white people are state cattle. Not too long ago, I heard Eric Stryker praising Richard Nixon, and someone actually had to remind him that Nixon was the president who signed the affirmative action law. So how does someone like that become this prominent white nationalist figure and not know or not care who signed the affirmative action law? Now, I don't want you to just think that I'm bashing everybody on the new right. Murray and Rothbard actually had a coalition with these people. I just want to see libertarianism and not fascism at the helm. And I do have to say, it's a peculiar type of fascism, one that is radically pro-homeschooling, pro-Second Amendment, and supports parental rights on vaccinations. I didn't know fascism could be so libertarian. So I'm here in Gasworks parking lot, where 30 years ago, my dad's best friend's girlfriend was sexually assaulted by the SPD right in front of him. So before I move on, I want to say a few more things about the fascist right. I don't think the fascist right defends the Confederate flag because they like it. The Confederate flag represents a limit to state power. I believe they defend it because the commies use it as an anti-white propaganda device, and because they like David Duke, who is a Confederate. Murray and Rothbard liked David Duke, and so do I. I find him charming. And I don't know why Ramsey Paul makes fun of him all the time. Of course, Ramsey Paul thinks that the Confederacy was a Jewish conspiracy. I think that some of the fascist right likes Lincoln because he was a fascist, a protectionist, and he wanted to deport blacks to Panama to give them exciting new careers as coal miners. Now, I know that some people would argue that Lincoln would have done this humanely, but Lincoln never did anything humanely. But since I'm on the subject of blacks, I just want to say that I wish they'd realize that the ethnic destruction of white people is also going to destroy the American black. If the Democrats take control of this election, they're going to make us a third world, multiculturalist paradise, and whites are going to be blamed for the misery. Okay. And now I'm going to talk about Jews. First off, I consider Zionism to be an anti-white cult. But let me give you some personal experiences I've had with Jews. Me and my dad's doctor was the famous Israeli libertarian Dr. Thomas Dorman. He was cash pay, and my dad was very sick. He refused to receive payment and treated my dad for free. Because of my dad's illness, we were very poor at the time. His treatments worked like magic, and he cured my dad. And I consider him to be a very saintly person. I grew up next to a Jewish family for 15 years, and they had a son my age. But they wouldn't let him play with me because I was a little shiksa. Recently, a former neighbor told me that he's doing well, and I'm happy for him, but honestly, I never even knew his name. There were 4 Jewish girls in my ballet class of about 15, and all 4 of them were bitches. But I don't think this makes me an anti-Semite, because all the girls in my ballet class were bitches. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be campaigning for Elizabeth Warren real soon. Now I want to say a few things on the mechanics of anti-white racism. The difference between me and the New Right is that I see Zionism and the state working together as equal partners. Whereas I think the New Right sees the government as a neutral force that is being corrupted by Zionists. But the reason why the state is not just a neutral force is because the state is always in expansion mode, and it gets rewarded for its failures. When the state fails, it demands for more money or more power. And of course, for all of this to work, the state needs a scapegoat. And in the world today, that scapegoat is the white male. Multiculturalism is being misdefined as a state of affairs in which 2 or more ethnic groups are living together in harmony. But that's not how I would define it. Multiculturalism is the intentional, state-sponsored destruction of the white peoples. It's important to understand the mind of the multiculturalist. In their minds, whites have been harming minorities for so long that the only way to defend themselves is by ethnically breaking up white communities. And if this harms white people in any way, well, that's just too bad. And another view held by the multiculturalist is that the old whites, presumably born before the 1980s, are bad. The younger whites are still bad, but not quite as bad as the old whites. You often hear this kind of thinking when people say that the world will be a better place once the older whites die off. And this is insidious because it convinces the younger whites to go along with the multiculturalist agenda. Now I want you to understand the mindset of an anti-white racist. What they do is catalog every negative experience they've had with a white person and use it as evidence of white racism, holding white people collectively responsible. Now, if a white person were to do this, he would be called a racist. And one more thing. The way they sell anti-white racism to non-whites is by appealing to their inferiority complex. Non-whites are the ones who believe in white superiority, which is fine and all, but it tends to lead to the development of an inferiority complex. When you convince someone that they are oppressed, they get to believe that they are the moral superior. The oppressed are morally superior to the oppressor. The thing about the inferiority complex is that most of history's atrocities were committed by people with inferiority complexes. And that's why we have to pray daily for white South Africa. So, I'm probably going to lose a lot of subscribers now, and even get a little hate. But those of you who stick with me, I'll love you even more. Oh yeah, and my finger painting poster for the SPD. That's fine.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of.
What?
I mean, it's bright.
Want to get closer?
You want me to?
I don't know, maybe it'll help.
It looks fine. Yeah, it looks good. Let me show you.
What?